Thanks for coming out to a special Tuesday edition of the North College Hill City Council. Obviously, yesterday was a holiday. Hope you all enjoyed it. We will start, as we always do, with our prayer for the NCH City Council. Please rise. And then we will do our Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can. With your help and guidance, we pray this in your name. Amen. Call this meeting to order. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein.
Present.
DeWald.
Here.
Underwood.
Here.
Miller Novak.
Here.
Zorb.
Here.
Blythe.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Thank you very much. Everyone is present. All right, we have tonight's agenda.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. DeWald.
I move to accept the agenda.
Mr. President.
Yes, Ms.
Anderson.
Nope. What is it? What's her
Anderson.
name?
It's Anderson.
I'll second that.
Motion to adopt tonight's agenda from Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein.
Yes.
DeWald.
Yes.
Underwood.
Yes.
Miller Novak.
Yes.
Zorb.
Yes.
Blythe.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. All right, you have the meeting minutes from our January 3rd meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald,
I move to accept the minutes as presented.
Mr. President.
Ms. Anderson,
I'll second that.
motion by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Anderson to accept the minutes from January 3rd. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein.
Yes.
DeWald.
Yes.
Underwood.
Abstain.
Miller Novak.
Yes.
Zorb.
Yes.
Blythe.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed. 6-0. 6-0, 1 abstention.
Thank you. All right. Turn it over to you for communication, sir.
Thank you. We received one piece of communication from OLM, Ohio Municipal League. It looks like they are requesting to send in an updated list of elected officials just for a roster that they keep on record. And it's due by March 1st. And that's all communications.
Thank you, sir. All right, next on the agenda is council committees. First up is City Community Development and Recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. So we last met last Monday. All committee members were there. We talked about just some updates on what's going on, like with our rec commission, with our recreation director, all that jazz. And then we talked about possible arts programs, walking paths, and other recreation programs that we could start looking into, start brainstorming about, start putting funds into. That was really about it. There wasn't much to do. Lots of stuff is in motion, so we're in the middle of a bunch of stuff. So a lot of it's just kind of chugging along. That is all. And then our next meeting is going to be next month, February 14th, on Valentine's Day. Aw, at 6:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next is budget and finance.
That's me. We met, we talked. Some of the stuff we talked about is gonna be on it's on the agenda for tonight, like the salary, ordinance. So I don't wanna, like, cover ground that we're gonna cover later. We also talked about, the one thing that would not be on the agenda tonight is a lot of conversation about code enforcement. And I contemplated it for a little bit after the conversation, and a lot of it was like, what line item should money be in that pays for code enforcement? And, well, that's a good question and stuff like that. I don't think that that's what people were actually trying to address. I think that the larger issue was what code enforcement means, how much we should invest in it. Part of me wonders if this council or its committees, maybe, I'm sorry, it's not like trying to shove work off Eric or anything, but the question of whether or not we want to invest in more than the current code enforcement officer that we're currently investing in. I think some of the questions came up. It was more about the substance and how much we should invest in code enforcement and how much the officer's time is doing what. I didn't think it was about money in my mind as much as it was about what we want out of code enforcement. If we want 2 code enforcement officers or 1. So that's something I think we should think about as a council and decide what committee we're going to talk about it in, because code enforcement is a big issue. Obviously, it's something that our community struggles with, whether it's like long grass or trash and things like that. And while we should discuss what line item that should be in, I think the bigger conversation is, do we feel like we should be investing more money in the code enforcement and providing 2 officers instead of 1? And those are questions that I thought everybody was asking, and I would like to develop those conversations. So I'm happy to do in my committee unless public safety thinks it's more appropriate to happen in that committee, and then I will yield to them. So that's something that we discussed and we should probably talk about moving forward. Other than that, I do want to thank Marjorie for taking meeting minutes. Very awesome, very quick, and that our next meeting will occur on the second Monday at 7:30. What's the date of that in February?
February 14th.
February 14th it is.
Thank you. Next up, rules and public policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our next meeting is January 24th. At 6:30.
Thank you. And public safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our next meeting is January 24th at 7:30.
Thank you. Next up, ad hoc reports. Any ad hoc reports? Hearing none, we'll move into administrative reports. Good evening, Madam Mayor. The floor is yours.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. President. I just had a couple things. The Food Truck Friday, again, I'm excited that's going to start again March 4th out here. I'm believing that we haven't discussed the times, but hopefully we can get them here a little earlier, 3 instead of 4. We haven't discussed that yet, but it will start back up March 4th. Right out here in front, and I talked to Ms. Miller today. We're hoping, she says she's going to put out for 15 trucks to see how many actually respond back. So hopefully we'll get a nice number from that. We still have the application open for the recreation director. We have received 2 so far. I talked to Mr. Mosby today about interviewing for that position, so that'll start happening fairly soon. I wanted to let everyone know that the CIC meeting scheduled for this week has been canceled. It has been rescheduled for next Thursday. I believe next Thursday is the 27th at 6:30. The Planning Commission usually meets tonight. We're not meeting tonight because there's a council meeting, so therefore that meeting is scheduled for tomorrow. That's been switched to tomorrow at 7 here in council chambers. And last thing I had is that on this Thursday at 9 a.m., Urban Fast Forward will be here in the community to go around. Myself, Mr. Mosby, I know will be there. I'm not sure if Mrs. DeWalt and Ms. Zorb will be. Ms. Zorb is nodding her head, and so is Ms. DeWalt. So we meet here at 9 a.m. This is our kickoff to something great, I believe. So we'll be here to go tour the city just so they can get a feel of North College Hill. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Next up is the city administrator's report. Mr. Mosby?
Thank you, Mr. President. I do have a few things. I think first off, we are anticipating breaking ground on our impound lot probably within the next 2 weeks. So we should be looking for that. I assume that at this particular point, I estimate it would take about 3 weeks or so to complete. So we're perhaps looking at around the end of February, beginning of March. We will also be putting together a plan for the council chambers, and I did send out an email to the members of council. So if they're asking if there was any input that you had, I know some council members did come out and expressed an interest in widening or broadening the office, or this chambers. So I will wait until tomorrow if anybody has anything else. Otherwise, we'll begin to put that plan together. I also wanted to let council know that Mr. Darwin Young, who has been a very dedicated civil servant and also was a very valued member of our Civil Service Commission, did resign from the Civil Service Commission. And so we do have openings, volunteer openings on the Recreation Commission, Planning Commission, and the Civil Service Commission. So if anybody does have any recommendations for citizens who may want to participate, those would be greatly appreciated as well. The migration to Microsoft 360 was completed today. I know that some of the council members have come and asked me about how to get in. I'm hoping that everybody did receive the email that I had sent, but if there is any additional help that is needed, if I can provide any additional information if you need that. And Mr. President, I think that's all I have for right now.
Thank you, sir. Any questions for the city administrator? All right, next on the agenda is the law director's report. He is unable to be with us this evening.
We do have
Oh, sorry.
a represent.
Thank you, yeah. I was just thinking that and then kind of just blew through it.
No worries, Mr. President. I'm Ryan LaFlamme filling in for Mr. Peters tonight, and I do not have anything to report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I apologize.
No worries.
And the finance director's report.
She is not here.
She is definitely not here, right? Thank you. Sorry about that. All right, next up is call of members, starting with Ms. Dukestein.
Hello, everybody. Just want to say thank you. It's been I feel like we've been meeting long and grueling hours lately. So I just appreciate everyone's dedication, and that's it. No update for me.
Thank you. Ms. DeWald?
I'd like to say welcome to the audience. It's nice to see you, Mr. McFlam, and Houday.
Got our first 2 day. Thank you, Ms. DeWald. Ms. Underwood?
Thank you, Mr. President. I too would like to say welcome. I always appreciate seeing people at our council meetings. Unfortunately, I don't think this is going to be an exciting one for you, but maybe you'll come back and see a exciting one. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. Mr. Miller-Novak?
Yeah. Well, I kind of feels weird because every Martin Luther King Day, we have the meeting the day after Martin Luther King Day, but I do want to wish everybody a happy Martin Luther King Day. It happened yesterday, but it just kind of always happens because Martin Luther King Day is always on a Monday, so we always have our meeting on a Tuesday, so we never get to shout out to Martin Luther King Day, but happy Martin Luther King Day. I did want to say something about it because, it's obviously an important holiday. I think it means something different to some people, but I think it means something the same to everybody. That Martin Luther King, in my mind is, and I'm just saying this again, obviously, we're a government, this is my own individual things, but as a Christian, Martin Luther King is the embodiment of one of the best Christians that I could think of in modern times, where a man used powerful words and advocacy and peacefulness to lift others up, not self-righteousness, and he paid the ultimate price for it. So he's one of the greatest martyrs and thinkers and speakers in American history. And it's not just a national holiday. I think if you're Christian, it's kind of a Christian holiday too, because he is a reverend, he was a doctor, a great American figure. So it's great to recognize him and to not forget to say thank you. So that's it. That's all I have today.
Thank you, Mr. Miller-Novak. Ms. Zorb?
I didn't get to say it during your report, Mr. Mosby, but I just checked my email again. I don't have anything about the Microsoft upgrade. Could you make sure I get that email again, or whatever it takes to make that happen?
I can talk to you after.
Perfect, thank you. That's
Mr.
all I have.
President. Ms. Zorb, did you check your spam? Everything I've gotten from Mr. Mosby today has gone to spam, so I don't.
Boy.
I did
Those are
not think to look in
encouraging
spam.
That's never a good sign, Mr. Mosby. Never a good sign. Ms. Zorb, you say you were finished?
I am,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you. Ms. Blythe?
Martin Luther King Jr.'s actual birthday is January 15th, 1929. And I also had a birthday January 15th this past week, and I was 57 years old, and I'm very thankful and blessed to be here.
Happy birthday.
Birthday. Yeah, heck yeah.
You're younger than he would have been.
Yeah, maybe about 35 years.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a teeny bit. Thank you.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Blythe. Happy birthday.
Thank you.
And finally, Ms. Anderson.
Well, now I have to follow that up with happy birthday. I also wanted to thank Mr. Steen for taking my minutes. I forgot to do that when I was giving my rundown for our committee. But thank you for taking those. Those are wonderful. I also want to say, it always feels weird to say happy MLK Day because I feel like it's happy to remember all the wonderful things that have happened now because of his words, but it's not always happy, especially when you're a teacher and you have to tell second graders how horrible it was when their grandparents were little. And so, but still, happy MLK Day, and I hope everybody remembered how grateful we should be now that we're all able to be in this room together and able to argue with each other how we do. I also wanted to say Who Day, and thank you guys for Microsoft. I really appreciate it. It's been a big help already. And that is all. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Next item on the agenda is remarks from the audience. Do we have anyone signed in, sir?
Yes, we do have a resident signed in, a Sandra White, right?
If you will, please take the lectern, adjust the microphone so that we can all hear you.
I'm going to give one of these to you because I spoke with you. And I will give one to you, Mr. President. And is there anybody else who
Thank
would
you.
like some information about the organization I'm about to talk about?
I don't know.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I'm
Yes.
sure.
Yeah, we're all about,
Take it off.
Why
all
not?
about paper.
It's okay if you don't have
You two share.
We could share a little
You
bit
and
too.
her share, or you and him share.
Okay.
I don't want to share with you.
Guys
Oh,
share.
you're gonna share with me whether or not you want to.
Well, actually, there's two more. Can you guys hear me okay through this? Well, first and foremost, I want to say thanks to Mr. Mosley for the invitation to come in and be a part of this tonight. I want to thank Mr. President and council members for this gracious opportunity. And that said, I am Sandra A. Wright. I am the founder and president of the Greater Cincinnati African American Heart Association. I established this organization on the back end of having a heart transplant. I hate to take this off because I just got
I'm
over
saying,
COVID.
can we allow
but
her to take that
I gotta
off?
talk.
Right.
And so, I too am a believer. I have lived more of my life serving God than I have otherwise. I am now 65. I have to think about it. I'm 65, and God spare life, this August, the 17th, I will be 5 years. Well, I'll be 66, but my heart will be 5. Wow. And so I'm very gracious, and I'm very thankful to be able to stand here before you, because I had to trust God in the face of death. Literally, I was dying. And I put my faith to good use to believe Him to save my life and to make sure that I got a human heart. And that's what I have, even though they were trying to give me a mechanical heart. But I stood on my faith, and I say that to the glory of God, because He is faithful and just to perform His word. So now that I've said that, as far as the Greater Cincinnati African American Heart Association, I am not a medical professional, and I don't give any advice about anything. My whole stance is on my lived experience and my story. And so that being said, standing here before you as a Black woman who stepped out to do something of the magnitude of the Greater Cincinnati African American Heart Association, which puts a Black name on the organization, I don't need to tell you what the challenges have been. I knew stepping into this, it was going to be that. And I told God, I'm here for it. If this is the purpose that you kept me here for, I'm going to give it all I have to the last day of my breath. And I will do that. And I have done that. Everything you see in that packet, I put that together. I did the flyers, I did all of that. And I'm not saying this because I want a pat on the back. I'm not saying it from a place of being egomaniacal, but I want you to know what my position is. I have stepped into an arena that I was totally oblivious to. I did not know how political it was. And I did not know how ruthless people are. In the 4 years of my existence, I've learned a lot. Most of the people that I've reached out to, and I have reached out to, I'm going to say city officials. I'm not naming anyone because I'm not burning any bridges, and I don't know what's going to happen. I might interface with those people again. So I'm very careful about what I say out my mouth. But what I have found is I'm getting crickets, and I've asked and pleaded for help. And, you know, it's just falling on a deaf ear. But what I have seen is the things that I have put out into the world on my website, on my social media, the people that I reached out to, they're gleaning my ideas and they're tweaking them and making them their own, and they're taking the credit for. And it's hurtful, to say the least, but it's teaching me that when you step into something that's greater than you and you're trusting God, you have to stay focused right there. And you cannot become personal, and you can't take it personal. And so the reason for this organization, as I was going through having a heart transplant, when somebody tells you at the young age of 57 that you have congestive heart failure, and you feel that you're just now getting to your sweet spot in life when you can start living for yourself because you gave everything to everybody else, and you get that news. Hold on a minute. It's devastating. It is devastating. And I felt so alone. I reached out, I looked out for a place to connect, just to feel encouraged or strengthened or supported. And there was no place. There were places, but they were not designed for me. They weren't put together the way that I'm cultured and how I relate. And I'll tell you something else. I was a volunteer. My face and my story was pushing the brand for a couple of these organizations. And so I know it may seem like a very bold thing to create an organization that is so closely related to another one that we're all familiar with. And I was not doing that out of anything malicious or any spite or any of that. I wasn't looking to do this. This was not something, nobody would have ever told me that I would be standing in this position. But God said, and I said, okay. And so I do thank you for this opportunity. The reason for the organization is because as an African American, we have the highest risk, we have the highest fatalities. We are often used to push others' brands and agendas, and our community benefits the least. I am 65. I was there to witness, I wasn't there to witness it, but I was alive when Martin Luther King was assassinated. I remember watching that on the news. I remember how they tore up the city in rioting. I was there when the National Guard pointed high-power rifles up to our window. My mother and my siblings, we were looking out the window to see all of what was going on, and they said, get out the window. My mother snatched us out quickly because the word was to shoot to kill and no questions asked. So Martin Luther King is not a story for me. It is my life. And the fact that he had a dream, we're still dreaming, and I'm still looking for the dream to come to pass. And so I'm just a little nobody that God is making somebody. And to step out to do this is so personal to me because it is my life. The comorbidities, the disparities, and all the things that we endure being packaged in this beautiful melanin skin is my life. It's been my life for 65 years. And I need to see a change. And sometimes we're looking for somebody else to rise to the occasion to make that change happen. And sometimes God is saying, you have to be the change. And that's what happened with me. So I stepped into the shoes to be the change that I want to see. I have no help. I have no money. This organization has nothing. For 4 years, me and my husband have kept it afloat. I can no longer do that. And so I'm standing here now because when you have a desperate situation, as we all know, desperate situations call for what? Desperate measures. And so I got on the phone today after getting a pep talk from a friend yesterday who said, you came too far, you can't stop now. Because I was saying, I don't know what to do with this, I'm gonna have to turn it loose. Because I've got to think about my own health. I'm a heart transplant. This is keeping me up at night. It's disturbing my sleep because I can only do so much. I can't keep doing this by myself. I need help on every level, volunteers, advice, all of that. And so that's what I'm standing here presenting to you. I'm not looking for money. I'm looking for help. I'm looking for those who believe in what I'm attempting to do here is to help a community of people who need it the most. I grew up, and I'm going to shut it down now because I don't know how much time I have and I want to be respectful. But I grew up where our elderly would not go to the hospital. My grandmother and other family members that were older. And I was too young to understand all of that, but just listening in on the conversations and hearing why they wouldn't go. And they would say, I won't come back. This is not about trying to do something, to have something to do, or to make a name for myself. This means so much to me. I was talking with one of my granddaughters about her life and what are you going to do in your life? And you can do this, that, or the other, anything you want to do. And she said, I hate being black. And she said it with so much disdain. And it hurt me to my heart because I knew why she feels that way. I've had to fight through those feelings. And I'm not saying what I'm saying to put anybody in this room on a guilt trip. I just need you to know we live a different life. We live a life you have no idea of. And we're tired, plain and simple. With the whole George Floyd thing, and you saw them marching, and you saw a lot of elderly people saying, we are tired. We are tired. We're tired of being suppressed. We're tired of being dismissed. We're tired of being treated less than human. We're tired of being overlooked. And for me, I am no longer waiting for somebody else to come and save us. I'm going to do what I can. And hopefully I will connect with a community of others who have that same mindset, and we'll get something done. And so if you have any questions for me, and I please ask you to forgive me for the emotion, because I know that's not professional. But I can't help being human. And as I said, this thing here is my life. I'm doing it for my grandchildren. I don't want them to go through their life feeling less than, or feeling that they're inadequate because of the skin that they're in. We can't do nothing about that. But I'm trying to live a life before them to show them you can do what is said that you cannot do. And I'm doing this with no help and no credentials to back my name. And it is a struggle, but I'm here for it. And I want to thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I will answer them to the best of my ability. The information that I handed out, some of that is old. It was established when I first founded the organization. Our website have the more updated information. And we are an online presence only at this point in time.
Mr. President.
Well, real quick, before we open it up, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Underwood, I want to say, Ms. Wright, that your passion and your emotion does not need an apology.
Thank you.
And I just want you to know that.
Thank you.
There is nothing more professional than someone showing their passion, in my opinion. So with that, I will turn it over to Ms. Underwood.
I would also like to reiterate what Mr. Graver said, that your passion is, it moves people. I think it moves people to action. So I would just say, don't lose that. what I will also like to share with you, and I don't know if anybody else knows this, but 3 years ago, I lost my 48-year-old brother to congestive heart failure. It was very unexpected. We were the exact same age, and that is the worst thing in the world to get a call about. So I just, sometimes God puts you in places to where maybe I can't walk every step of the journey with you, but I'm certainly willing to help. I have some ideas about how you can get more people. So if you will accept it, I will give you my contact information.
Gladly accept
I
it,
will-
yes.
And I have some ideas about how you can kind of organize and
Yes.
and how I can help you.
Thank you. Yes, I definitely take your card.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
how big is your organization right now? I mean, about how many people do you have that work with you?
How many am I?
Two.
My.
She has two. She has me.
I do have a board.
That guy too.
I have a board. My board, oh, I'm so sorry.
See her?
Please
Can't
forgive
wish
me. Forgive me, honey. This right here is my rock. This is my husband, Raymond Wright. He is also the vice president of the organization, and he is the financier and anything else that I need him to be. He is all of that. The chauffeur, he's whatever. And so he is one of the board members, and then I have two other ladies that's a part of this. The secretary actually lives in Texas, and the treasurer is a friend that I met in church several years ago. But the thing with that is none of us have the background for doing this work. And so they all rely on me to give them marching orders. And if you don't know, I will tell you that everything that's keeping this moving forward, I'm that one. So when I tell you that I have a to-do list that's beyond this city, it's overwhelming. Which is why I'm standing here, because I'll give you a little metaphor and I'll take the next question. I'm like a little goldfish who decided to jump out of my comfortable little bowl and jump in the ocean and not realize the trepidations that I was going to face. But I'm a fighting goldfish and I'm not going to drown.
I do want to say your passion and your desire is admirable, and I would end up with saying that God doesn't call the qualified, He qualifies the called.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Mr. President?
Mr. Miller Novak?
Yeah, thanks for coming in. I mean, I read an article actually not that long ago that women are statistically less likely to have a heart attack, but more likely to die, because the symptoms of a heart attack in a woman do not fit the advertised symptoms of a heart attack, which are the way men experience heart failure is very different than women. So the signs that they tell you to watch out for don't necessarily apply to women who are dealing with some kind of heart failure or heart attack. So it's obviously an important issue of awareness. I'm not, admittedly, I never try to pretend to be something I'm not. I'm not a nonprofit person in terms of I don't have any experience of making them succeed. But I do wish you the best and luck. And I do know that woman right there, though, is a great advocate. I'm an attorney and she's a criminal defense attorney, and a great one at that. And so if she gave you your card, you should probably call her and pluck her mind, because she's a great advocate. And, I do wish you all the best and luck. I think it's a really great mission. And thanks for coming to talk. And going to different city councils, it takes guts, and I think ultimately, you could set the goal of being huge and having a really successful nonprofit that's something massive, or you can set the goal of doing what you can do.
Exactly.
And getting the awareness out there and getting people like her to help you out or give you some tips, or to even just adopt your message and tell her friends. And, at the end of the day, don't put too much pressure on yourself. right? You know, just getting here and telling us things and making us think about stuff that we weren't thinking about yesterday, today, is a really important thing. And I think sometimes we tend to set the bar too high for ourselves when we do good things. And sometimes, you know, if you convince one or two people to think about life differently, and that makes an impact somehow, whether you call it the butterfly effect or whatever thing, you know, just by going around and spreading your message, if you make one woman realize, oh crap, some of these things I'm feeling might be a heart attack, and she goes to the doctor and she doesn't die.
Right.
Think of the good you've done. So you can think about this, but some of the greatest impacts are right here, you know?
Well, to your point, I just want you to know that I'm very grounded, and whatever is to be accomplished here is going to be by the hand of God. I'm empty. This is not about me. I'm just a steward over what he's put in my hands until it's time for it to transfer to the next hand. So I do appreciate that. As I said, I don't have a goal for this. It is just to exist and to serve the community of people that it was created to serve. And that's it for me. But thank you for that. And I will always keep that at the forefront of my mind. I have to. This can't be something where I get personal about it, because it's ruthless, and I have found that out. Anyone else?
I'm a whole crybaby, so I'm so sorry. But I just like to commend your passion. Definitely comes through. And so when I see other people passionate about things, it equally makes me passionate about whatever. And I'm also a believer, so I know the weight of having purpose in something. And so also, I just put together a training for microaggressions for African Americans or just any ethnic group at work. And so some of the things that you touched on about the hardships is very real. And it's sometimes something that wherever your background may have you be placed is not it's not the most comfortable thing to have in a room where there's diversity. So I appreciate your willingness to just touch on things. Also, I have a mother who's very ill and has been for at least 20 years of my life, and I've seen and experienced some of those things that are biased towards her in the healthcare industry, or at least they feel very biased. And so working through that and hearing your testimony and things you shared pulls at me. So thank you. I actually just sent you my information via your email address here. So that is it, and that is all.
And just to let you know, we have two programs. One is called the Let's Go Red Shoe, which is the Women's Health Initiative, and then we have Strength and Courage, which is a support network, so that there is a place for everybody to feel accepted and included, and to have that feeling of the village, the strength of the village. And so go on the website. It gives you more detailed information. Again, thank you all so very much for your listening ear and for giving me this time to come and to share. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright.
Thank you.
All right, next on the agenda is legislation. Mr. Hedger.
Thank you. So we have first reading ordinance number 1, 2022, an ordinance to amend and establish salaries and staffing levels for the city employees pursuant to the requirements of section 3.06 of the City of North College Hill Charter.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson.
I move to suspend the second and third reading of ordinance number 1. Just kidding, I'm sorry.
No, well, cool. Mr. President, There's a small, like, edit that needs to be made, so before.
Oh, you're right. I
Yeah.
actually
No,
saw
before
that
you
too,
get
and I
there-
forgot.
A big
I'm sorry.
edit.
Go ahead.
They don't have this on there.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's a big edit, it's just $1 and some change.
Oh, it's not that.
The edit I'm talking about, unless someone has another edit, there's a number that's wrong. I think it's just 1937. Is that right, Mr. Laflamme?
I believe that's what Mr. Mosby informed me.
1937 under Finance Specialist AR Mimi Anderson.
I believe that's correct, yes.
What's that supposed to be?
One of the original ones said
1854.
1854.
1854.
Okay.
And Mr. President?
Yes? Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Wald.
What?
Go ahead, Ms. Wald.
Well, thank you. On this newest piece of legislation, under Section 1, it's supposed to be on there to begin and take effect on January 21st. And that is blatant, it's just not on there. So it was a big red flag to me.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
I don't know that I agree about the word red flag. I think I forgot to communicate that to the law director. So
No,
it's
I meant
something,
It was a big red flag that it's missing. I mean, it was one
well,
of
it's
the
something
things
we
that-
can, if I can finish my sentence, something we can amend now if we want, right? So,
Mr. President.
someone have an amendment request?
Ms. Anderson.
Also, sorry if we're amending, because I know that we changed so that everybody would either have annual salary or hourly rate, but the clerk of council still has both. Was that purposeful, or was that just accidentally still left on there?
I do not believe the clerk of council has an hourly rate.
We should strike the $400 a month.
Okay, so then I move to amend Ordinance 1/2022 to remove the $400 a month from the clerk of council hourly rate and just keep the salary, annual salary. And then to add the date, can somebody help me?
January 21st, I believe is what I heard.
Thank you. January 21st to section 1.
You can see where we did it the last time. That's what we
Thank
did
you.
last
To
time.
to have this ordinance go into effect, January 1st of 2022, right? Right, yeah.
Are you questioning the year?
No, I was making sure I was saying the right thing. Did that make sense?
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
I'd like to request a recess to speak with council. Just me. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important.
You mean go into executive session?
No,
Okay.
it wouldn't fall under an exception. I just need to speak with council privately.
Okay. So, do I need a motion for the recess?
Yes.
That is a motion for the recess. I apologize.
Mr. President, I'll second that.
Motion from Mr. Miller Novak, second from Ms. Anderson for a short recess.
It was on,
Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWald,
No.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak,
Yes.
Zorb,
yes.
Blythe, Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Okay, we're in a recess. Convene the meeting.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
I motion that we reconvene this meeting.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I'll second.
All right, motion for Mr. Miller Novak, second for Ms. Anderson to reconvene the meeting. Please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWald,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak,
Yep.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed, 7-0.
Meeting is back in session.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I'll revoke my motion, please, that I had before
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Miller Novak's. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I got it here somewhere. Oh, it's over here. Okay,
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
I'm going to have two motions because I want to get them both right. And one's simpler than the other. But my first motion is to amend Ordinance 01-2022 to strike $400 a month from the line item of the Clerk of Council. So we'd just leave the salary at $4,800, and secondarily to amend the line item for $19.37 under Finance Specialist A.R. Mimi Anderson to become $18.54.
All right, we have a motion on the floor from Mr. Miller Novak to strike from the Clerk of Council line item the $400 a month nomenclature, and also to change the 1937 for the, Finance Specialist A.R. Mimi Anderson from 1937 to 1854.
I'll second that, Mr. President.
Is that you, Ms. Zorb?
It is.
Any discussion? All right, motion for Mr. Miller Novak, second for Ms. Zorb for two amendments to Ordinance 01-2022. Please call the roll, sir.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWald,
Mr. President, can I go back to discussion for just a moment? He said he had two
He has
motions.
another motion that he's
Okay.
going to make after this one. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak,
Yep.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Abstain.
Motion passed, 6-0, one abstention.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
I'd like to make another motion to amend. I wanted to find the simplest place to do it. Section 3, paragraph 2, at the very end. So, Ms. DeWald's concern, and I don't personally take an issue with it, is that nobody gets another raise until next year, which is fine if we want to somehow memorialize that. So where I would recommend doing it is it says additionally pursuant to the authority of council as set forth in section 3.06 of the City of North College Hill Charter, council hereby approves the discretionary authority to the city administrator with the approval of the mayor to announce annually increase mayor to annually increase the wages / salaries of the individual / positions listed in section 1 of this ordinance in an amount not to exceed 4%, parenthetical, 4% numerical. That's an Arabic number, not Roman. I would strike the period at a comma. To begin January 1st, 2023. period. That should do it. Mr. LaFlame, would you agree that that works?
I agree that'll be a proper question.
Okay, I mean, I think that's the simplest place. It's at the end of a paragraph, so we're striking the period, adding a comma to begin on January 1st, 2023, period.
Mr. President,
Mr. Wald?
could you ask Mr. Milanovac again to repeat what he said about my opinion about this? This was not something to start an argument with, which is what he's doing. This is something that was agreed on in a meeting that was eliminated or omitted or didn't get in there.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. President,
Mr. Miller-Novak?
I think doing something that someone asks you to do is not starting an argument unless I'm in bizarro world. The point is I don't, and I said earlier today that of the changes I communicated with Mr. Dieters, this is one that I failed to communicate. And I'm just coming up with a place to amend the thing on the floor that fixes it. I don't understand how that's an argument at all, ma'am.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
may I take a stab at interpreting between the two individuals? So what I believe Ms. Dewald was referring to at the beginning of this conversation was the first time we passed this ordinance, we added to Section 1 that these salaries were to begin and take effect on January 1, 2022. Is that what you were referring to, Ms. Dewald?
That and the fact that I was not alluding to the fact that people were going to get more than one raise in a year. I wasn't alluding to that fact at all.
Mr. President,
Yes, Ms. Dukestein?
in our previous conversation, when it had the verbiage in there yearly, that was the qualifier that said that people would, and I recognize that you weren't saying that, but it alluded to the idea that people would only be getting a raise once, and that would happen at the first of the year. And so we didn't need to identify or change that section because of that. So that is where we left off last time.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
all I wanted to clarify was that we agreed on the verbiage to be added. The comment of why I wanted it added was not correct. It's not because I was worried about somebody getting more than one raise a year. It was because this was agreed upon, and when it was transferred over to the new 2022 legislation, it was overlooked, omitted, or whatever. And I'm just saying that I wanted it back on there.
So it is noted, Ms. DeWald, that that is the reason that you wanted it on there was because we agreed to have it on there?
Yes,
And we
thank you.
currently have a motion to amend it to add that language into Section 3, Paragraph 2.
Mr. President, I ask a
Ms.
question?
Nichols?
I heard a lot of dates, and I just want to make sure I have the right one. Did we say this was going to go into effect the 21st?
Yes,
Or-
ma'am. January
of this year,
21st of
January
this year.
21st, okay. Thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein?
Mr. Mallor, Novak, do you mind reading what you're changing it to again, please?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Do you mind reading what you're changing it to again, please?
Sure, absolutely. I really wish Section 3, Paragraph 2 wasn't one sentence. I know. All right, so Paragraph 2 of Section 3, and I'll read the entire thing because it is one sentence. It will read, additionally, pursuant to the authority of council as set forth in Section 3.06 of the City of North College Hill Charter, comma, council hereby provides the discretionary authority to the city administrator, comma, with the approval of the mayor, comma, to annually increase the wages/salaries of the individuals/positions listed in Section 1 of this ordinance in an amount not to exceed 4 percent, parenthetical, 4%, and then the period will be stricken and replaced with a comma, to begin on January 1, comma, 2023, period.
Okay, thank
And the
you.
nods from our council says it's endorsed. Yeah, so that will work.
Council SEL.
Council SEL.
Okay, still have a motion on the floor.
So, Mr. President,
Mr. Wald?
so we're missing just a couple words because the initial amendment made back in, 2021, it said to begin and take effect on January 1st. So I'm asking council, do we need take effect in there? Because that, he didn't,
I think it's operative without it, that's okay. There's several ways you could state it. You could say begin to take effect. You could just say effective January 1, 2023. You could also say that. So I think the way it's written is operative. If everybody can agree to that change, that would do what you needed to do. You could also qualify it further if you want, but I don't think it's necessary.
okay, thank you.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
Mr. Laflamme, I believe the question is these pay rates, the existing ones listed on here, we want those to begin January 1, 2022. We don't want them to be retroactive back into 2021 or whatever else somebody wants to manufacture in their head. So that's the point that I believe is we're talking about right now, not necessarily his disclaimer, and I'm using that term loosely because I'm sure it's wrong, but for these salaries to take effect, we want these to take effect January 1, 2022.
Yeah, okay, so, excuse me.
So I think there's two separate issues.
Certainly, and so we've addressed the one with the change in section 3. If you want to make this retroactively applicable to January 1, 2022, I would apply it in section 1, in that first sentence, adding effective January 1, 2022.
Thank you.
That would be what you need. Otherwise, your ordinance is going to be effective prospectively.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
listen, I don't have a hard time, and I don't have a problem discussing that. I think, I'm trying to amend this in piecemeal, right? So I got the numbers corrected. I'm trying to correct section 3. We can do another motion to add another amendment. We don't have to do every amendment in one shot. I just want clarity for the record, number one. Number two, I think what maybe some people are worried about, maybe I'm just confused, is feeling that somehow by passing this, it becomes retroactive to some past. If we don't put a date in there, it's not retroactive, it's forward thinking. Laws are not automatically dated back. If we pass it today, then people get their raise today moving forward. There's nothing that would cause it to go back to the year 2010 or the 2019. So if everybody here wants it to be retroactive to January 1st, 2022, and that's what we want, then we should amend it to say that. But if people think that unless we put a date in here that this becomes effective, it becomes effective today. You don't have to put a date in here to stop it from becoming retroactive to some weird date in the past, because that could become potentially endless. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Laflamme.
All the legislation is prospective unless it's stated otherwise.
Right. But if we wanted to go back to January 1st, 2022, then we'd have to give some employees a lump sum. If we pass it that way, everybody has to understand that some people are going to get a lump sum, like extra amount on their next check, correct?
Which also has to have been subject to withholdings and all the normal.
Right. Normal W-2 pay, they get a lump sum. I don't have a problem with that. I'm happy to do that. All I'm saying is that, number one, we don't have to do that to stop it from becoming retroactive. We pass it today, it's passed today moving forward. If we want it to go back to January 1st, 2022, because we want our employees to have that salary going back to them, I actually support that. I just ask that we do it in an additional amendment so our amendments are clear on the record. Does that make sense?
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I don't know what that was all about, but I think we were all in agreement that it would start January 1st, 2022. my initial concern on this last comments was that when we put it under section 1 originally, and in section 1, it said, as listed below, to begin and take effect on January 1st, 2022. And now we've got it in section 3, which, I'm not complaining about that. My concern is the word take effect. I don't believe Mr. Miller Novak put that in his motion. And so that was my concern. Do we need the word take effect? And you clarified that we really don't need that. So,
What I was addressing then, I thought that you were talking about was the section 3, part 2 amendment, not the section 1 amendment to make all of the salaries set forth in the ordinance retroactively effective to January 1, 2022. I'm thinking of two separate issues. I think we're all discussing. So one would be, when is this ordinance effective? And two is the authority for the city administrator to do annual increases effective. So there needs to be two amendments certainly to take care of that, plus the third amendment to address, the third and fourth amendments to address the actual salary changes that need to be made within the ordinance itself.
okay, so I think we're really discussing this too long. So putting it in section 3 changes what it is intended to do?
Adding the amendment that has been proposed to section 3, part from the second paragraph, makes effective the authority that you're granting to the city administrator not until January 1 of next year. So if that's what the council wants to do, they need to insert that language now so that it's not, the city administrator doesn't have that authority until January 1, 23.
Correct.
If you want to make the salaries that are set forth in the ordinance already itself effective January 1, 2022, we need to also add language to section 1 to make that effective prior to the.
Okay, because that was Mr. Dieter's suggestion, to put it under section 1. And then,
I honestly don't, I haven't.
well,
Mr. President,
but now we've got it in section 3, so it makes a whole big difference now. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying there's two different things happening. They're completely separate subjects.
I understand the two different things that are happening.
So, if I may,
Please read back his
No, she
motion.
Ms.
can finish.
Dukestein,
because before I make my comment, I wanted to clarify what her last question, and that is separating it from section 1 or section 3, does that change? Because what I remember, and Mr. Mosby can probably speak to that, because I remember him very adamantly, we talked about changing it, and then there was a later conversation. It circled back around, and Mr. Mosby and Mr. Dieters agreed that we would not change it because we had the verbiage in there. I said yearly in my previous comment, but it's actually annually. And Mr. Mosby stated that we would not give an evaluation more than once or raises more than once.
Right.
So we would not put that language in there because it, as is, was fine. So that's, I think your notes are from the previous, like the first part of it, and then we actually revisited it and decided that because the word annually was in that space, we would not add it again. So that, I just wanted to clarify, but if adding the language to section 3 changes the other issue, and we need to put it in section 1, that's a separate question, I guess.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
just for clarity, I mean, we talked about this a lot in Finance Committee, and Mr. Dieters wasn't there. And that's where I'm getting a little bit confused, because it keeps being said, Mr. Dieters said this, Mr. Dieters said that, but a lot of what we're talking about right now happened in the Finance Committee, and Mr. Dieters wasn't there. Listen, I'm fine not amending either Section 1 or Section 3. For me, this ordinance works functionally as law, as the way it's written. We amended a couple things that were just clerical issues we wanted to clarify in terms of like pay rates. But technically speaking, under Section 1, if we pass it today, for instance, it becomes effective today. We don't need to do anything to change that. Regarding Section 3, I'm sorry, but there was discussion in my Finance Committee about administration having the ability, she's nodding her head, she remembers it.
Right.
To
I
give.
didn't argue that.
Listen, I don't interrupt you when it's your turn to talk. Please don't interrupt me when it's my turn to talk. So, there was discussion about that, and that's what I was trying to clarify. Because I know people had concerns. I don't think it was a concern of mine personally, but if other people had concerns, I'm just trying to split the baby. I just want to pass it. I just want our employees to get raises. If we want it to date back to January 1st, 2022, and give our employees raises for the last month they worked, I'm all for it. Let's make the change. Let's amend Section 1 to say it becomes effective January 1st, 2022, and our employees that way get a raise that backdates to the first of this year. I am so fine with that. I would really love to do that. If we want to safeguard, if some people are uncomfortable with the language or they feel like the administration could give people raises again before January 1st, 2023, we can change Section 3. I don't care. I trust them not to do that. I'm just wanting to pass this. So everybody tell me. I'm happy to work with everybody, work with Mr. Laflamme to make an amendment that works.
Mr. President.
Let's figure it out.
Ms. Underwood.
I have just a question, and this is going to be completely off topic maybe. If we can't convince people not to smoke on city property the way they're not supposed to, how then do we trust them not to give somebody a raise who doesn't deserve it?
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
let's just do this. I'm just going to withdraw my previous motion. I'm going to make a new motion. And again, I think this hits the concerns that I've heard from everybody, which is all I'm trying to address. I motion that we amend Section 1 to read as follows. The following salaries and staffing levels are set as listed below, comma, to begin to take effect on January 1st, comma, 2022. I'd like our employees to get raises starting January 1st, 2022. In addition, I would move to amend Section 3 as previously stated, that at the end of the second paragraph, we strike the period, put comma, to begin on January 1st, comma, 2023, period. What my amendment proposes is that everybody gets their raises starting January 1st, 2022. We'll owe a little bit of back pay, so if it takes 3 readings to pass it, that chunk will grow. If we pass it today, it's smaller. It is what it is, but our employees get raises starting January 1st. And additionally, no one has to be concerned that the administration will give anybody an additional raise before January 1st, 2023. At that point in time, we are on smooth sailing. Moving forward, they will have the discretion to give people annually raises of 0 to 4% at their discretion, which was the goal of the amendments that we made to this legislation. That is my motion.
Okay, there is a motion on the floor.
Mr. President, I'll second the motion.
All right, so we have a motion from Mr. Miller Novak, second by Ms. Underwood to make 2 amendments to Ordinance 1, 2022. The first is at Section 1, at the end of the paragraph, I'm sorry, more of a sentence, right? To strike the period, add a comma, and add the words "to begin and take effect January 1, 2022. The second amendment is in Section 3, paragraph 2, at the end of the paragraph, to strike the period and add a comma, to begin January 1, 2023. Please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWald,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak.
Yep.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
No.
Anderson.
Abstain.
Motion passes 5-1, 1 abstention.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
well, this is going to go over like a fart in church. I'm sorry. Sorry, forgot my mic was on. I'd like to make a motion to, in section 3, to remove the second paragraph completely. Excuse me, I'll use a different terminology. To strike the second paragraph.
Section
Where-
3, paragraph 2.
Yes, sir.
I second the motion.
I'm sorry, I heard somebody say they seconded.
Mm-hmm. It was Ms. Blythe.
Ms. Blythe?
Yes.
All right, motion from Ms. Zorb. Second from Ms. Blythe to strike section 3, paragraph 2 from, I'm sorry. All right, so the motion is to amend ordinance 01-2022 by striking section 3, paragraph 2. Motion for Ms. Zorb, second for Ms. Blythe. Please call the roll.
I thought we were doing discussion. No discussion?
If you
Discussion.
want it, you can ask for it.
If you want discussion?
I just want to know why. We might as well, we're here.
Discussion.
May I read something to you? So, this is directly from the charter, and this is where I think we're going really down the wrong path with this. The charter states, "The council of the city, by ordinance or resolution, shall determine the number of officers, clerks, and employees in each department of the city government, and shall fix by ordinance or resolution their respective salaries and compensation, and the amount of bond given for each officer, clerk, and employee in each department of the government, if any is required." And then it goes on to talk about the bond. But to me, this section right here is in complete contrast with the charter. And no ordinance whatsoever can supersede the charter.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
part of setting salaries is setting raises and setting ranges. And we got the law director's opinion before we did this. And you know, I respect Ms. Zorb's, opinion, but again, I think as a body, at the end of the day, we've hired an attorney, and it's a non-political question. We asked our counsel his opinion legally, with all of his years' experience doing it from 9 to 5, day in and day out, what his opinion was and whether or not, under the charter, that this is okay. He's the one that drafted it. So, no offense to Ms. Zorb, but I'd prefer to listen to a guy who's actually a lawyer and doesn't just play one on TV or in council meetings. So, I think that if Mr.
President?
Dieter says that it's appropriate and it's good, I think it's good, and honestly, I mean, agree with it. We have the ability to set salaries, to set the compensation. There's nothing in the charter that says that can include ranges or discretionary amounts that we assign through ordinance. By setting this ordinance, we are setting the salary amount plus the raise. I think cities do that all over the place. I don't understand the controversy of it. I'm obviously in favor of it to make sure that our salary ordinances in the future are passed and they happen and our employees continue to get raises, because it just hasn't happened in an appropriate and fluid manner. So I support this amendment. It's been endorsed by our law director. I don't know what else there is to talk about.
Ms. Zorb?
So I'd like to point out, actually, I'm going to reiterate some words that Mr. Miller Novak stated himself. This was presented to us at a committee meeting, and Mr. Dieters was not in attendance at that committee meeting. This was presented to us by Mr. Miller Novak. Yes, Mr. Dieters wrote it up, but we have not had the chance to talk to Mr. Dieters about this. face-to-face.
I did.
Sure, you did. We, as a body, have not.
Okay.
We haven't.
Mr. President,
And I want to point out one more thing. I know Mr. Miller-Novak keeps stating that we're setting salaries. This paragraph states that the city administrator will set the salary. We are not setting the salary any longer. And in a conversation I had with Mr. Mosby after the last committee meeting when we spoke about this, Mr. Mosby even implied that council will never even know what the employees make anymore because it won't be covered in an ordinance.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby?
Ms. Zorb, that was a very inaccurate
That is exactly what
recollection.
you
No,
said.
that was not. In fact, I gave an example of what that would look like. I used, and I will say it related to council so that it was clear. I said if an employee, for example, was making $18 an hour, and the ordinance says that that the city administrator could give a raise from anywhere from 1% to 4%, 4% being $18.72, I could not go above $18.72. What I said was that it would be, as Mr. Miller-Novak said, up to my discretion. If I give a 0.5%, 2%, 2.5%, that would be totally up to me. But it would not exceed what council had already set. That is what I said. So just like today, even though there is a provision that is put in the ordinance, which is fine, it already goes without saying, if council sets the salaries at a specific rate, we had already discussed this, I can't go above that rate. So I could not arbitrarily give someone a raise. I couldn't do it because council, as you pointed out, has already set the salary. And until another salary ordinance had been passed, the employees will continue to make the same rate. So I do want to be clear on that. I don't want to misrepresent at all what our discussion was about. I was going to say this, however. I think that as you were discussing this, clearly one of the what I would call not advantage, but I think one of the good things about council is you have a variety of ideas that come together and, of course, ultimately set policy. And I clearly get your interpretation of council shall set the salaries. But that is your interpretation. It may be another member of council's interpretation to interpret it another way on how to set the salary, in this case, giving a range. Now, once again, to Mr. Miller-Novak's point, I have talked with several of my colleagues. And to be honest, most of them do exactly what Mr. Miller-Novak said, which, in other words, their council gives them a range in which they can compensate their employees, and they have the discretion to give a raise within that particular range, that salary range. And that even includes a starting salary range for new employees that would come in. So honestly, the way that it has been handled is very difficult, and I know that it has caused a lot of consternation even before I came on, because I remember sitting in that seat, and I remember having some of those discussions. And I do believe that this way it could be done. It does not take away your control at all. It just simply says there is now a limit that you can, or a range that you can work with, you being me, the city manager, to have some discretion to give your employees what would be an appropriate raise within that pay range. And by the way, I think it was Ms. Anderson, I did want to bring this up as well, and she brought up, I think in 2019, she was talking about inflation was 2%. Now, there was a report out recently that said that inflation in 2021 was 7%. So no matter what, even the raise that the employees are getting is not keeping up with the rate of inflation. So I don't even see how that would be that could even be considered, because even the 3% raise would not give them what they would need in order to keep up with inflation. So I needed to share that.
Mr. President.
All right, Ms. Underwood was there first.
I just kind of have a clarification question. So my understanding was, just with regard to that paragraph, was that it wouldn't necessarily be Mr. Mosby or the city administrator, but it would be the department heads that would recommend what the raises are going to be. Am I misinterpreting that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be accurate. It would not be me arbitrarily giving an employee, especially if I don't work with that employee on a daily basis.
And I believe that that is my concern, not that if it were the city administrator, maybe I wouldn't be concerned. I am concerned about some of the department heads, or some department head, maybe one, maybe more, I don't know. That is what causes me concern.
So if I can clarify, on the positions that you're talking about, the unclassified positions are the department heads, with the exception of the positions in the finance department, the part-time position in public works, and then the part-time positions in the police department. So in other words, the number of employees that you are referring to is a very small number that even if the department head would be able to give a recommendation, it wouldn't be, I mean, it would be like one or two people basically that you're talking about.
Okay, so as usual, I'm not really explaining and articulating myself very well, but that's okay. Not really sure how to explain what my concern is, but I don't think that I'm articulating what my concern is very well, because the answer that I'm getting doesn't match the question that's in my head, so I'm just going to yield the floor.
Help at all, were you asking if the department under the ordinance department could do the raise with this authority? Could grant the raise?
Right.
Under the strict language as it's written here, only the city administrator could make the raise, and it has to be approved by the mayor in order for it to be effective.
That's right.
So a department head would, under the language that you have in your ordinance, would have no authority other than a suggestion that could be accepted or not accepted, if that is not practice. But the department head has no authority to grant any raises to employees that they oversee under this law.
See, he speaks lawyer speak. There you go.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's, Mr. President, I think
Mr. Miller Novak?
yeah, that was exactly what I was going to say. So, yeah, I mean, but here's the deal, folks, on the charter thing. It wouldn't make logical sense. Every 3 years, depending, they flip-flop, we pass these things called collective bargaining units, which set raises for 3 years. We don't vote on the raises that our classified employees get every single year. We pass a contract that authorizes them to get additional raises for the next 3-year period. So the idea that somehow it's unlawful today for us to pass a salary that gives us a raise, sets a range for raises for the next several years, or indefinitely until we repeal it or adjust it or amend it, is somehow unlawful or it violates the charter. If that was the case, then every time we pass a collective bargaining agreement, we would be violating the charter. That does not make any logical sense. And that's my whole point, is that at the end of the day, we've got a law director who has told us and drafted this. Yeah, I understand he didn't come to the finance committee meeting, but he wrote it. He wrote it when I talked to him and I said, this is an idea I have. Would you write it? Is it lawful? He said yes. He signs it, basically saying this is his work product. He passed off on it. Every time we pass a collective bargaining agreement, we do the same exact thing. You know, I always joke around. I call it the North College Hill filibuster. When we don't like something, we start arguing about whether or not it's lawful. Well, that's why we have a law director, to ask him whether or not that what we're doing is legal or not. And if he says it's legal, I don't understand why we're all debating it. That's his job, is to say it's lawful. It's our job to decide whether or not we want to do it. And that's what it comes down to. If you don't want to do it, vote no. If you want to do it, vote yes. But don't second guess legal opinions from a legal professional just because you don't agree with them or don't think they're right. And in this circumstance, I don't even think it's logical. Every 3 years, we pass a collective bargaining agreement. It's the same exact thing.
I disagree with that.
Mr. President,
Mr. President, I'd like to call the question.
Ms. Nichols, and then we'll go to vote.
Before we do, Ms. Zorb, were you reading section 3.6,
I was,
3.06?
yes.
Okay. And my only thing with that is that it actually states it at the beginning of that actual paragraph. In one sentence, pursuit to the authority of counsel. To me, that's saying, I'm not an attorney, that was my dream job, didn't happen. But pursuit to the authority, meaning the authority that council has in the charter under section 3.06. To me, I read it like he just shortened it in that one particular section. And then you provide what we do every time we go into a meeting about any of these, yay, nay, or the conversations that we have. That's just the way I interpret it. I mean, again, I'm not fancy like these other ones over here, but that's just my interpretation, that it was already set forth in that first part of the sentence.
All right, we have a motion on the floor to amend Ordinance 01-2022 by striking Section 3, Paragraph 2. That motion is by Ms. Zorb, second is by Ms. Blythe. Please call the roll.
Dukestein,
No.
DeWald,
Yes.
Underwood,
No.
Miller Novak,
No.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Abstain.
Get the vote, buddy.
3-3.
You ready for my vote?
Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Mr. Graver.
Thank you. No.
Motion failed, 4-3, 1 abstention.
I don't have my paper set up to collect my vote, so sorry about that. All right, thank you. Mr. Hedger, please proceed.
Second reading, Resolution Number 1, 2022, a resolution requesting the county auditor to make advance payment of taxes.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby?
I apologize for the last council meeting. I didn't say it earlier, so I will say it today. This resolution would allow us to receive our payment, our regular payment of taxes much earlier, which would give us cash basically to operate. It is a procedure that most municipalities do follow. That's why they give it at the beginning of the year. So I would ask council to consider suspending the final reading and getting it passed so that we can forward that on to the county so that we would be able to receive our advance payment.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
I'm sorry, I didn't really, I mean, this is kind of like going to be jarring. I didn't want to interrupt. I wanted to motion to suspend the readings on the last ordinance, and you kind of like went, there was no pause, and I didn't want to interrupt him when he was talking, and then he got in. So I would, in my personal opinion about, ordinance 01-2022, I'd like to suspend the readings, and I think we've talked about the salary ordinance many, many times already, and my point being that I know some people support and some people don't, but as it's amended, we're going to have to pay back because we just added to January 1st. So I kind of think, we should vote on it today. If it passes, then we have to give people like less a lump sum. People who are going to get raises don't have to wait as long to get them. So I'm going to move to suspend the readings, and I hope that it passes. And if you want to vote no for the ordinance, then you can do it after we suspend the readings. So I move that we suspend the readings to ordinance 01-2022. Sorry, I stole your thunder, dude. I didn't mean to, but I wanted to do that earlier.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I thought we had moved on to Resolution 1, 2022. with the advance payment of taxes?
We had, so, and I will disagree with you, Mr. Miller Novak. I gave plenty of a long awkward pause to move to the suspend before I asked Mr. Hedger to proceed.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak?
I'll just appeal one more time in the sense that at one point in time, there was a motion to suspend the readings. So I was a little bit confused whether or not that was still pending. I didn't remember who made it. But there was a brief motion to suspend the readings. I'm just saying, if I'm overruled, that's fine. I'm just bringing that up, but we're not gonna be here for 2 more weeks and paying back, but I will yield to your wisdom.
I have no record of anyone suggesting that we suspend any readings on that.
Am I wrong about that? Okay.
There was?
No, she said,
Yeah.
yep, I'm wrong.
We had an initial, we've had 2 things withdrawn, and neither one of those are a suspension. So we had already moved on to second reading of resolution number 1.
Okey dokey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. President,
I have Ms. Underwood first.
I move to suspend the third reading for Resolution 1-2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWalt?
I second that.
Motion to suspend third reading of resolution 1-2022 for Ms. Underwood, second by Ms. DeWalt. Any discussion?
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
the word auditor is spelled incorrectly. I don't know if it's spelled incorrectly on the legislation. It is spelled incorrectly on the agenda.
Yeah, so the I and the T, we just need to make sure that that's correct on the document. Mr. Hedger?
I'll take a look at it.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWalt,
Yes?
Underwood,
Yes,
Miller Novak,
Yes.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Sorry, yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I move that we adopt Resolution 1-2022. Is that getting?
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWalt?
I'll second that motion.
Motion for Ms. Underwood to adopt resolution 01-2022, second by Ms. DeWalt. Any discussion? Please call the roll, Mr. Hedger.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWalt,
Yes?
Underwood,
Yes,
Miller Novak,
Yep.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you. Please proceed, sir.
Second reading number 3, second reading resolution number 303-2022, a resolution to certify assessments to the county auditor for placement on the tax duplicate.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWalt?
I move to suspend the third reading on Resolution 3, 2022.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I'll second that.
All right, motion to suspend third reading of resolution 3-2022 by Ms. DeWald, second by Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWalt,
Yes?
Underwood,
yes,
Miller Novak,
Yep.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
I'm giving a long, awkward pause to allow us to go to the next step.
Oh, jeez, stop.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I move that we adopt Resolution 3-2022.
And Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I was writing notes, so yes, I second that.
Sorry, I missed it. I was
All right, motion for Ms. Underwood, second by Ms. DeWald to adopt Resolution 3, 2022. Any discussion? Please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWalt,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak,
Yes.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is further remarks from the audience as it pertains to legislation. There is no one here, so I will assume there are none. And we will move to old business. I hear no old business. Next on the agenda is new business.
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I don't want to cut anybody off, but if nobody has new business, I move to adjourn.
Mr. President,
Ms. Dukestein?
I just want to circle back. I did not get the Microsoft email.
Nor did I.
Mr.
Thank you.
President,
Ms. Anderson?
after you guys get it set up, I can help you guys set it up on your computers if you want. I'm pretty tech savvy, but I don't know what like your passwords and stuff are, so you guys will have to talk to Ron about that, but then I can help you set it up if you'd like. Just offering my services.
Okay, hearing no new business, Ms. Anderson has made a motion to adjourn.
Mr.
Go ahead.
No.
Mr. President, I have
Steve.
one other issue. And it is new business. I would like to propose at some point we talk about some kind of like training for council going into 2022. Honestly, I don't think we treat each other very well. And I think it could stand for some improvement. And maybe we need to reiterate morale. I don't know if that looks like a morale event or just some training on how you interact professionally in a way that gets your point across without making people feel bad or criticizing them in a backwards, undercut way. So, my proposal.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I would like to say that I agree with Ms. Dukestein, and I would also like to just say that I have to sit in my car before our meetings and talk myself into walking into this building because of it. I have like so much stress with my job that actually pays my bills that, you know, the labor of love is becoming, you know, heavy. And so maybe if we have something like that, it'll help. But
Mr. President,
Ms. Anderson?
I know that when I first joined council way back when, that we talked about getting together like an onboarding thing too, just in general for new council members. So maybe that could kind of be a part of that too. So kind of like a general onboarding, but also like a professional development sort of thing, if that makes sense. Kind of lump it all into one, since there are a few things that need to get done with like the onboarding situation.
Mr. President? No.
Ms. Dukestein?
Does anyone else agree, disagree? Because if we do agree, then I can kind of present some things that look better. But if not, if you guys are not interested, I don't want to waste my wheels.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
you could start with our council rules, look in there, see what we have, see what can be updated.
Mr. President, I actually sit on that committee. I've went through them. We actually just went through them this summer. But council rules are not being followed. They're not, but it's it's also just the humanness of dealing with someone on a professional level. I don't think reiterating the council rules is weighted enough to correct it, because you guys have been doing that for a very long time, and it's not. I hear that it's better. I wasn't here previously, and I can't speak for the group that was here before. But, so I don't know. If there's no interest, I'm okay with that.
So, Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
so I've been on and off council for quite a while, and I've never sat on a council yet where there hasn't been a healthy debate. And if that's what you're trying to avoid, then we're not going to have a very well-balanced council. There needs to be a debate so we can get all this stuff fixed the way it should be.
Mr. President, I agree 100%. I am not in an environment professionally or in anything that I do outside where I do not invite healthy debate. I welcome it even with in my home life. But what we are having are not always, it's not always healthy. And that's the operative word.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood?
I agree with Ms. Dukestein, and what I will say as an example of what she's saying, when I worked for a major corporation, the one thing that they required us to do once every quarter was something called team building, where we all had to go to training together, and like we did training exercises, but then half of the day was spent where they had counselors come in and they put you with people you wouldn't ordinarily work with, and put together puzzles and whatever it is we were required to do, escape from a maze, go to a Reds game, whatever it was. But it did help people to work together better, I think. I think that that's what Ms. Dukestein is describing, and I can say from experience that it does help. But I also agree that if you're not receptive to it, then it probably won't help.
Mr. President,
Ms. DeWald?
I'm just reading through an email here that was sent to us, January 12th from Ron Mosby. And it offers training. I'm trying to thumb through here to see exactly what training they're referring to.
I think that's.
But if you look at your emails, you didn't get it? You did?
I did. It's
Okay.
it's from OML.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Thank you.
Anyone else want to weigh in? Okay, I will go back to a motion for adjournment that's on the floor. from
Mr.
Ms.
President?
Anderson. Ms. DeWald?
I second that motion to adjourn.
Mr. Hedger, please call the roll.
Dukestein,
Yes.
DeWald,
Yes.
Underwood,
Yes.
Miller Novak,
Yes.
Zorb,
Yes.
Blythe,
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
This meeting is adjourned.